So listen, Mark, we touched on a bit earlier on a very interesting point there about how, as a sound engineer, you basically worked on, on a lot of sort of music when it comes to jazz, a lot of jazz artists, and you also mentioned Kwaito actually, that you worked on back in the day, man. So how was your experience as a sound engineer, back in the day compared to now?
Oh, I loved it, dude. I still do a lot of sound engineering, not as much as I like because day job gets in the way. Sound engineering is just absolutely amazing. It's changed a lot. I really enjoyed being in the big studios with the big desks and tape and all that. Just working with a mouse is kind of a bit difficult. Not difficult. I find it not creative. Not as you can be more creative, but it's less spontaneous. But no, it's like the only reason I don't do a lot of sound engineering, sort of going into the back end of the 90s, I realized that if I was going to marry the love of my life, I was starting to do a lot of touring with bands. I was doing a lot of studio albums, and studio is my love. I was doing a lot of studio stuff. But what was happening is the real money was on the road. So, I was touring Germany with Mahube. Oliver Mtugutsi wanted me to go with him to do a tour of America and that sort of stuff. But I just couldn't. If I had got on the road, then my current wife and my kids and all that wouldn't have happened. And so it was the right decision. But I still love the sound engineering. And I still think, up until COVID, I still think because a lot of guys are doing it at home now, and what you really need is you just really need a good pair of ears, and then a good understanding that you can reinforce with some science. So a lot of cats that know very little are able to figure it out. And ultimately you follow the sound and you follow the music. So whether the maths behind the frequencies and all that lines up, if it sounds smashing, who cares? It sounds smashing. So so engineers have kind of found themselves in a hard spot. But I think it's great. I love sound engineering. Also because you get to work with other creatives. You get to see how they operate. You're not a fly on the wall. You're instrumental, but you're not pivotal. And there's no necessarily huge pressure on you to come up with a track. Whereas when you're an artist, you have to come up with a track. As a producer, you have to make the track sound smashing because it has to be different. As an engineer, you're a little bit further down the food chain, but you still get to witness firsthand the brilliance of Hugh Masekela and many other greats, So
you mentioned a lot of legends there, bro. Well, namely Oliver Mtukudzi and obviously Hugh Masekela as well. Tell me about your relationship with Oliver, because you for him to actually be like, yo, Mark, let's head out to America, but dude, there must have been something there. So how did you actually meet him? Tell us a bit more about that.
So it's all to do with Steve Dyer. So I was working, like I said, I was. Look, my life is a lot of more arse than class. That's why I say you just keep trucking on and things line up. So I was at University of Natal Durban, and I was playing more in my band than I was studying. So hence I passed certain subjects and I didn't pass other subjects. And I decided then I would rather get into music. And I came back to Joburg and I started phoning around, and I managed to land a job over the phone. I think they were just desperate. I phoned up a recording studio, and this guy by the name of Derek answered, and I said, which sound engineering courses do you recommend? And he says, I don't know any, but do you want a job? I mean, that's I don't know if it's divine intervention or what. And then I just said yes. And then he said to me, when can you be there? I said, where are you? He says, I'm in Steeldale. I said to him, okay, I was back at my folks' house in Vereniging, of all places. I said to him, okay, that's 40 minutes away. I'll be there in 40 minutes. And I had a job. And so I worked there as like I say, my first job, I was apprentice engineer on Mbugeni Ngema's Serafina 2. And so here's this little white guy, okay, in the middle of 1992, surrounded by some serious shit hot is the only way to put it, people. And I know nothing about any of these guys.
It was sort of like a blessing in disguise, because then it was sort of like no pressure. I mean, if you did know how big these people were, it would have been like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit.
Well, I mean, you must understand, as an appy, you're cleaning the studio constantly. You're not doing much sound. You're just watching the main engineer. You're fetching everybody coffee and tea. You're turning the tapes. So you're running around like a gopher, doing everything that the sound engineer, so the main sound engineer doesn't get out of his chair behind the desk. But still, you're moving microphones. You're learning. I mean, you're a sponge. So, I worked at those old EMI studios, and that's where I was exposed to a lot of the jazz greats of, recording Hugh Masekela, worked not closely with him, but I recorded him too many times. Jonas Gwangwa, loved working with Jonas Gwangwa. He was one of the first guys I kind of was then sort of moving into the main engineer. But through all that, I started working closely with a jazz producer and musician called Steve Dyer. And him and I got a great relationship. And Steve Dyer was very close to Oliver. So when Oliver and then Steve Dyer built a studio, and I helped Steve wire and build the studio in Johannesburg, then what happened is Oliver wanted to take his next album to the next level. So because I was friends with Steve and had worked with Steve on a couple of TV shows and things like that, he then said to Oliver, let's bring Mark in. So I came in, and the first album was Tuka Music. So I did Tuka Music, and we did the next 3 albums. I did Pai Vepo, and I did another one. So, Tuka Music blew up for Oliver. And at the same time, we did Mahube, was the sound engineer on Mahube, and Mahube was doing the tours and that sort of stuff. So, I mean, that's how I got there. Oliver, I was very, very sad when he passed on, because Oliver was just one of the most amazing people I'd ever worked with. So chilled, and such a great character. And the nice thing about sort of African jazz, great thing about African jazz and sort of African music like that, if I step away from the Kwaito side, but more that sort of stuff, the world music is classified as world music, is that they keep it raw. So as a rock guy, I don't have to make the thing sound like it's not the thing. If there's a funny sounding, like if you listen to Oliver's acoustic guitar, that's his acoustic guitar. There's fret buzzers, there's things. That's the way he played. But let's bring it out, If it's a djembe drum that's got an over-ring and stuff like that, leave it, because that's how it sounds. And the guys actually play it with that sound, and that's why I love the connection between raw rock music and the African jazz / world music, is because it mustn't be processed. It is what it is.
Yo, this is super cool, man. I'm in awe right now. Just considering the people that you worked with and the work that you've done as well. Tell me a bit more about your whole friendship and working relationship as well with Steve Dyer. Are you guys still working on some things? And obviously, when you guys built that studio together, what are some of the best memories that you guys have had, in that particular studio?
I don't know if it's memories. I mean, the studio was literally a garage in Berea in Joburg. It was a fantastic creative place, and you made do with what you had. It was still tape machines. There was no computers and stuff like that. But Steve Dyer, we've done a lot of work this year. The end of last year, I did Oliver's daughter's album, Selma. I did Selma's last album. And we've done a whole bunch of other stuff this year. I think I've done 2 or 3 other stuff that's come through studio. And I'm actually, this weekend, we start mixing his next album.
It's a nice thing to sort of hear that there are a lot of good things came out of that studio there, and to know that you had a hand in how it all ended up. It's really cool, man. One of the things that you actually mentioned as well earlier was when we were talking a bit about Preferably Men, was that it was basically through a book that your then soon to be wife had suggested to you and whatnot, and considering that was years ago, bro, somewhere around 20 years ago and whatnot, just looking at the fact that she's the one who we'd say sparked the fact that Preferably Men even became a thing, as she suggested the actual book. Has she always been sort of supportive of you and your work, being interested sort of in more of the music and arts and whatnot?
Yeah, I think Ilona has definitely been interested, and she supports me thoroughly. I think I push the limits on what would be considered acceptable probably sometimes. But the beauty of it is that she met me doing this. she met me working late nights. She was studying at Technicon. So I would come home from working with Mark Alex or working with Cheese Corp or something like that. I would come home working at like 5 a.m. We'd sit down and have breakfast. She'd go off to study and I'd climb in bed and then be back at the studio at 10 o'clock, a couple of hours sleeping back in the studio. And then she'd be at a band gig on the weekend. So this is how she met me. So this isn't new. It is chaos, especially when you add a day job in there. So the music is less chaotic, but it still gets in the way. And sometimes I have to learn to say no.
I mean, dude, you literally turned down, you had to turn down Oliver so that you could, handle the family. So it makes a lot of sense, bro. Sometimes family, matters a bit more. And, the fact that, she had an influence on, preferably men, does she still sort of have a hand in some of the tracks, by the Fismits or anything else that you make currently, like till this day, does she still have any input at all?
I mean, she doesn't have input, but she has influence. So where am I now? If I go through the tracks, Definitely Need to Be Strong is in there. She definitely has influenced that elements of her in that song. Maybe I'm stealing from her, and I'm stealing stuff from a few other people and putting them into that song. And there's a couple that haven't been recorded that we play live. Definitely about us. Oh, I mean, the second track, which she called him. That's about how her and I met.
Cool to see that you guys are still going strong. Even after all these years, bro. And I think we'd be doing an injustice if we actually don't go back. You mentioned another legendary name in South Africa, like in South African music in general, Chiscorp. Mendoza, who passed away a few years back, was actually part of that trio. I can't believe you. Like, what? What was your experience with them, bro?
Dude, I'm gonna sound like a white boy that knows absolutely nothing about quiet. Right. So I've done some work with Prophets of the City and Brasafani Car. So I think it was off the back of that, but it was also the guy that had the Cheese Corp where they recorded the studio was a friend of Steve Dyer. And I think the engineer dumped them at the last moment. So they needed me to come in there. So I arrived there and I couldn't believe the chaos that was happening behind this microphone. Kwaito was very simple back in the day. They pretty much had like two tracks. Like they arrived and everything was already coming out the computer or the sequencer. Like they would do everything in like an OX9 or an OX7 or something. Like everything's in the keyboard, the drums, everything. They plug that into the desk. Then they stick up a microphone in the studio and the guys just go for it. My jazz ideas and my rock ideas, and I hear this stuff and I'm going like, are these guys still testing the microphone? Because it's like, and it's just because it's the language thing. I'm not following the language, so I'm an English boy, so I don't, so it's just this, it's going over each other and, repeating what each other is saying, and I'm not getting it, and I'm just putting it together, and the guys come back, yeah, and they're happy, and they're vibing and everything like that. So it was wild, I still issued the invoice to the studio with trepidation or something. I was like, I wonder if they'll pay for this. but they did. They loved it. It was the same with the twins. There was also chaos. But yeah, it was good.
like I say, Mendoza was part of that, and he's one of the biggest, one of the pioneers.
Yeah.
One would say when it comes to Kwaito in South Africa. This is huge, man. This is, I think, you know what the incredible part about this is? Most people who would have been in your position would come across more, what can I say? I wouldn't say cocky, but considering the artists that you've worked with, man, you are super humble and like you're very easy to talk with and one to talk to and all that there. But what would you say you attribute that to? Just how grounded you are.
The fact that you worked with somebody who appears to be great is actually irrelevant. It's more about, did you give 100%? Did you get the work out of it? Were they happy with the product and all that? So there's this professionalism thing that has to kind of be there. So I'm humble because I did a good job. Did it do wonders? I got paid for the job. Sound engineer is also a plumber. You come in and you work by the hour. You don't get points or anything like that. So if the thing blows up, it blows up. But I think the fact that, and a lot of the pro sound engineers would probably be very pissed off with me right now because, I think a lot of my relaxedness is that I actually do it for the love. I went back to study IT when I realized that I wasn't going to get on the road. And I've made sure I work with the people I want to work with, and I work for the love of it. And I've not been paid for a lot of the work I haven't done. But I don't walk around dissing these guys saying they didn't pay me. And maybe it's because I'm fortunate enough that the fact that they didn't pay me for that job is not necessarily stealing food out my fridge. You know what I'm saying? So I don't feel tainted necessarily. And for me, it's actually more of a privilege. Like I said to you, when I worked with Mbugeni and Gema, I didn't know who these people were. So I can't be boasting about it. And honestly, I was just a little guy in the corner fetching coffee and learning how to EQ drums. That's pretty much what it is. When I did the Cheese Corp stuff, I didn't know my ass from my elbow. I was a decent sound engineer who'd done some huge albums, but this took me completely by surprise. And it's not like I hadn't done necessarily quieter. It was just that this was on another level of what I'd done. I mean, I'd done Hey Tada by Prophets of the City. I'd worked with the Twins. I'd worked with Mark Alex, but they were completely different. It's a completely different genre. Now all of a sudden you're working with these. So it's like, they're not great because of me. I was just the engineer behind the desk. They were great because they were who they are and they brought that fire. I'm just the guy behind the desk who was privileged enough to be surrounded by these people. And I can sit here and maybe name drop, and it's a good conversation. But that's all it is. If they'd had another cat behind there, they probably would have done just as well. It's completely random. Like, I got my first job by a phone call. That's completely random. Maybe I made the phone call, but I also I've got very lucky.
Completely makes sense, bro. Just touching on Fismits, I think for one last punt as well on the band, you did mention, in terms of the influence behind the music, your wife being, an influence in 102. And obviously you guys singing about your roots, your lives, controversial elements and whatnot. Looking at what you were talking about earlier with a couple of the bands, that were sort of, what can I say, that were very vocal, that were the voice, against what government was like, back in the day.
Yeah.
To anyone who's sort of new to the Fismits, sort of experience and whatnot, bro, what when it comes to the social and political aspects and whatnot, how do you guys sort of tackle that there? What are your guys' views and whatnot?
I don't know what the other guys' views are. I write what I feel. So if something cheeses me off, I'm probably going to put it down. And unfortunately, English was my lowest matric mark, very around 55 or a 56 or something stupid. So I'm not the most poetic person. I tend to call a spade, and I describe it exactly as I see it. And then I put it to music and we move on. So that's pretty much what you're going to get from the Fismits. I'm not going to spend too much time describing as the spider is attacking you, what the grass looks like and how the sun was setting and all that sort of stuff. I'm going to describe the spider attacking you. So that's what the Fismits is about. So whether it's about a relationship that's gone wrong, whether it's about a political person that's cheesed me off, whether it's about me feeling secure or insecure, that's exactly what it's going to be like.
For someone who's probably listening to this and is like, okay, I'm very intrigued by what Mark is saying. I really want to go and check out, for that political aspect, which track exactly is it that we should sort of go listen to? And if maybe not any reference from the particular track, then sort of what is it like exactly? When I asked the question, you basically said that you don't know what the other guys' views are. So what are your views specifically? If you are comfortable with sharing, of course. I mean, someone will obviously go and listen to the track as well if they need reference.
One Dead Friend is the obvious one. That's political. I don't mince my words. I just don't mention names, But again, I don't think I'm saying anything that nobody else is thinking or has been said. I'm just maybe putting my words out there, So it's not controversial to the tune of it being it's not radically different. I just think it's just the way I would say it. And that's what it is, I'm a punk guy at heart. That's the music that stopped me dead in my tracks when I was entering my teenage years. Before that, you listen to everything. And then something strikes and you kind of go down a specific way, and punk music was it. So I'm very much attuned to what's happening socially, what's happening politically. What am I pissed off about when I get up? It's very difficult for me to be that guy because I have a day job. And I'm privileged, like I'm privileged enough to have worked with some great people, but life is still a struggle. There's still some argument there, And the other political one, with more of a social one, really is Nothing to Lose. That's actually got a line from the bridge in that song I've stolen. I don't want to say I stole it, but there's a line in Mahube from a song called Ushunapi Na. Jazz guitarist, he in the middle of this beautiful Zulu jazz, because he's Beki Khoza. Beki Khoza is a phenomenal jazz Zulu guitarist. Also, when I heard him sing, I thought, if he can sing, I can sing. Because he's like really raw. And he does that, how can I be homeless in the land of the plenty? And I just said to myself, I have to write a song that has that line in it.
I think it's what you write about really is relevant to what's happening. Like when you mention Nothing to Lose, when in part of the description of that as well is, the stupidity and also life threatening situations, we constantly find ourselves in. I feel like that is very interesting, considering, South Africa, I'm not going to say isn't the safest place. Like with my experience working in courts, it's just seeing this on a daily basis, like right in front of my eyes, the crime and everything like that, bro. I completely relate, and I think that's a winning point with what you guys are doing with Fismits. It's like it's very relatable stuff, and even one dead friend, when in the description when it mentions that it was back in 2012 and it was during we were deep into the Z years. I think that's enough context for anyone who basically wants to know and get a better picture. I think that's way more than enough context for them to understand what was going on around that time. So you guys have nailed that like really well.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I was a bit worried though, because when that whole era ended, I was like, can we still sing this song?
Just for you and sort of the band and all that there, what does the future sort of hold? I know it's a cliche question, but, for anyone who's actually just invested and has been very, intrigued by what we've been talking about in terms of yourself and Fismits as well, what is sort of in the pipeline for you guys?
The pipeline right now is to get my new drummer Arthur up to speed. There's a few week pipeline to get that up to speed so that we can hit the new year playing the full repertoire of songs. And I think that for me is immediate, is to find that gel, because if anybody's listened to this and anybody who's been in a band will know that the hardest thing in the world is keeping a band together. It requires a very multifaceted person to try to do that, and I've failed it dismally many, many times. I think that's the key thing for me, is just solidify what we had in 2019 before Luke went away, is to try to find that solidity with the 3-piece again, and then build out of that. Find what version 3 of the Fismits is going to look like. I think it's important. There's a ton more material, songs that need to be recorded. We still have a lot of songs that are being recorded. That never made it onto Before the Hindsight, because it probably wasn't. A lot of the songs I felt still needed a bit more work. The arrangement wasn't quite right, or I felt the key wasn't quite right, or things like that. So I don't necessarily want to now regurgitate those recordings as a next album. I would rather hit the studio with version 3 of the Fismits with its sound. So I think that for me is the key thing, and just keep working hard and be patient, I think is important, and see where we go. I don't want to be too precise about what I want, because I might get despondent again. But I also don't want to have no goals. So it's a bit fluffy.
You summed it up perfectly. Even in closing, Brew, just my observations in terms of what you were saying, and sort of the level of belief that you have in what you guys are doing as Fismits. The fact that you guys, just looking at the example with your drummer leaving, it was sort of like people that form part of the band leaving has sort of been the results of that in recent history has been the band completely just falling off and not going on, because it's like, well, so and so is no longer in the band. How are you going to continue? Let's just end it and stuff. But the fact that you guys have sort of gone on, I think shows that you guys are really in tune with what you guys are doing, and you have a lot of belief in it. So I really hope that with whatever you guys have coming up, you guys just keep that kind of spirit, because, you know, Fismits as a band is, you would say, bigger than each individual, and it's sort of like it has to go on no matter what. So I really hope that, you know, in even in 10, 20 years time, we'll be sitting here talking about your guys' achievements and you guys being on the top 100. Like, please, like I'm booking another interview in advance. 20 years from now, we need to have another conversation, Mark, dude. So in 2040, we're gonna have another one. Hopefully some in between as well to catch up. But let's see how well we can continue pushing this. I think we should play out with One Dead Friend, because, you know, that literally jumped at me. Even your explanation of it is perfect. But before we close out, are there any sort of shout outs, anything you'd like to say to everyone who has followed your journey and whatnot? This is your chance to do so, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just thanks to the guys that have stuck with us for all these years. Thanks to Bruce, who was the singer and songwriter in the previous band. There's 2 songs of his, one on this album and one on the previous one. So we still keeping some good songs going there. I think a big shout out to my wife and family for their support, even though I think I'm pushing the limits. And thanks to Neil, my bass player, who sticks with me through thick and thin, you know. And I'm hoping we can solidify Arthur. So yeah, and we can go for it. So yeah, I think it's you know, shout out to all those guys who are still climbing on the bus with me and saying, okay, we'll go, Mark. Let's go. Where are we going? Okay, no, I'm not really worried. We'll just go with you.
That is proper, man. And I think we also, like, even on our side, we just got to thank also just Devo as well for setting this up. Like, I really appreciate...
He's just a slave driver. He's had me on a hamster wheel for the last 3 weeks, which is actually a great problem to have. He's doing amazing things. Like I said, I'm a crap salesman. I can do the engineering. I can do the songwriting. I can try to get a band together to put on a stage. But I can't sell the damn thing. He can.
100%, man. You know, every band that we've had that he's associated with say the same thing, and even our relationship with him as well. You know, him getting us in touch with, you know, phenomenal creatives such as yourself, man. It's priceless, bro. You can't put a price on something like this. So really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Devo, for setting this up. Thank you to everyone that's been tuning in and listening to this. We really hope that you guys continue to follow Mark on his journey, as well as Fismits as well. And yeah, guys, we're going to be playing out with One Dead Friend. And just to remind you guys, we are available on Instagram at Sludge Underground, on Facebook at Sludge Underground. And obviously all our episodes are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and SoundCloud. We are Sludge Underground Podcast across all those platforms. One more time, Mark, just to remind people where to get in touch with you guys. You said Facebook, websites and everything.
Yeah, Facebook is at Fismits Band. And then all the others are at the Fismits. And if they're in doubt, fismits.com is the website. And all the links are on the page below. And yeah, all the music, just search the Fismits on any of the streaming platforms and then save it, put it on repeat. Yeah, that's all.
Sweet, man. Listen, thank you so much for joining me and having this conversation, Mark. I really appreciate this. It was really awesome and really fun. And I hope to chat with you again soon, man.
Cool. No, thanks for having me, man. I really enjoyed it.
I'm going to be closing out. It's One Dead Friend by Fismits. Enjoy. It's bye for now.
You said